All right. I got this is Town of Monroe Board of Finance agenda special meeting Thursday, April 4th, 6 p.m. This meeting will be recorded and made available on the town's website pursuant to state law. If you're attending remotely, please remember to mute your microphone unless you're speaking. Anyone participating remotely should state their name and title, if applicable, at the outset of each occasion that such person is speaking. All votes taken with any member participating remotely should be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. Chat feature will not be utilized nor considered during this meeting. So we'll call to order and roll call. Rebecca O'Donnell.
Present.
Steve Kirsch.
Present.
Samantha Spino.
Present.
Catherine Stoffer.
Present.
Nicholas Santavides. Nicholas. Okay. And I know we have the superintendent, Joe Cobbs, right? Ron Bonovsky.
Here.
Heidi Mead.
Here.
Selectman Rooney.
Here.
And I see Frank there as well, Frank Duchess. And Dave Terrace, Board of Ed.
Here.
And I can't see who else is there, or that would include everybody else. But, so we can, I think, roll right into the public hearing. What do we have to read in the communications? Well,
Yeah, you have to read in the.
great. All right. Someone want to read that in for me?
Don't.
The memo?
Yeah, so it's a memo from the first selectman to the town clerk dated, it's actually dated March 25th. So there is a slight scrivener's error on the agenda regarding the Board of Finance public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 25 budget.
Okay. Pursuant to Town Chapter 8, Section 5, the purpose of this public hearing is providing the elector or taxpayer the opportunity to be heard regarding the town budget as proposed by the town council. So we will open it up to anybody in the room there.
Does not appear to be anybody from the public wishing to
That's
speak.
what I was assuming. Anybody on the call who would like to speak? Not hearing anybody on the call either.
So they would have to unmute themselves.
Right. So I'll make one more. Anybody on the call wants to speak, please unmute. All right, hearing none. We'll close the public hearing. We'll roll into the budget workshop and we'll turn it over to Superintendent Cobbs. As we're doing the Board of Ed tonight.
Thanks, Mike. And I have here with me Sheila Casanelli, Assistant Superintendent, Mike Crowley, Director of Instruction, obviously, Ron and Jen Parcell, Director of Student Support Services, Jerry Stevens also here as a board member. So I try to do the Reader's Digest version of the budget summary here for you with some updates of where we are in terms of mitigating the initial adjustment. So I'll try to go through it relatively quickly. I know a lot of these are numbers that you're familiar with. A lot of the stories are stories that you're familiar with because we've been coming to these meetings for a while. Our initial budget was a $72 million, $524,000 proposed. That's what I proposed to the Board of Education. That's what the Board of Education adopted, a 7.15% increase. The things that really drove this budget this year, number one, and again, something that we've talked about with this council for a while, was the elimination of grant funds coming out. This was the last year of ARP ESSER. So we knew that we had been funding positions through that, and you'll see that a little bit later on. We've talked a lot about the next three things, about enrollment increases, especially at the elementary level, especially in kindergarten. We continue to watch that. The budget as submitted included a 15% increase in health insurance premiums. That was, those were, what we were told to put in by our insurance broker. We've since gotten different numbers, but that's what went into that 7.15% increase. Obviously, other things that impact us every year, continuing escalation of special education costs. Although, and you'll see later on, right, put as risk to the budget, special education costs. I put that lower only because we know that we've had a very good relationship with this board, once again, in terms of setting a contingency account for that. Funding of repair and maintenance accounts. We all know that, you know, you go get a number one at McDonald's now, it's $17 or $18. So everything is inflationary. And we have included in this budget is a one-to-one Chromebook policy for students, starting in 3rd grade, that everyone would get their own Chromebook. But if you flip through, you see our key drivers. There's no surprises there. Education is a human resources business. 82% of our budget is pretty much tied up in salaries and benefits, with a few other things there. You see the tuition and transportation. The next page shows, coming out of the gate, we were, just under a 1% increase out of the gate in the elimination of our ESSER funds. You see there, $697,000 of that, 634 in people. I think that consisted of 6 people, if I'm not mistaken. And then, some professional development and supply money. So again, coming out of the gate, that was almost 1% of our budget. The next page, I've included our budget history, which just kind of shows a really interesting correlation between student enrollment and staff. We've made a very concerted effort with the support of this board and the town in terms of getting staff commensurate with the levels that we were at, in the late 2000s, that first decade of this millennium, and the 2010s and 11s, because then we had this pretty significant decline from basically around 2010 to 2019 and 2019-20 or 2018-19. The one thing I've shared with people is from 2018-19, which was our last year of decreasing enrollment. So that was 5 years ago. From that 3,118 students to now, it's actually more than 3,479. This was the number as of December 4th. Right now, we have added 374 students in the Monroe Public Schools from 2018 to 2023-24. To put that into perspective, and it's disingenuous of me to say it's equivalent to a school because it's spread out across 5 schools. So I'm not saying that, but it is, our population at Monroe Elementary K-5 is smaller than 374 students. So, we've added almost the whole school, but again, interspersed throughout the district. I'm happy to go through all of our staffing requests and movements. There's quite a few asks on here. Social studies, I'll go really quickly, and if anyone has questions, please feel free to stop me. But so a social studies position at the high school, currently we have a staff member who teaches both social studies and English. We'd like to be able to dedicate that person to one of the departments. So whether this was a social studies or an English department, we just haven't been able to run classes that kids are enrolling for because we don't have enough staff up there. And then the alternative is that the kids sit in study halls, which, it's good for a kid to have a study hall, but to have 2 or even 3 in a block schedule, means 75 minutes to 150 minutes a day, where they're, half their day is set in study hall, which we don't like doing. We have increased with case sizes of 20 to 23 students at Massac, with a lot of students that require coming in that are going to require individualized reading instruction. So we're looking for a special education position there. A district priority from the Board of Education has been an analysis of the Jockey Hollow math scores. This position, the math intervention position, would be a certified position that would help, push into classes, pull kids out, and give math support, to help in that area. If you look directly across that, you'll see a -2 math intervention at Jockey Hollow. Currently, we have 2 positions that are non-certified. So that 1.0 math intervention certified position would be offset by reducing those 2 math interventionist positions. 0.4 counselor at Stepney. Right now, Stepney, we have 95 students in the district that have that require multilingual learner services. 31 of them are at Stepney. Their population continues to grow. That counselor would put them kind of commensurate or a little bit more equitable with the counseling ratios at the other two elementary schools. 0.5 speech and language pathologist, that's what the SLP is. Again, at Stepney, we have one person servicing 70 students for speech services, as well as itinerant pre-K students. It's unmanageable. The next two positions together, the 0.3 sped at Stepney and the 0.4 sped at Monroe Elementary, those are actually positions that are currently already full-time. They were budgeted as 0.7 and 0.6. We received an IDEA grant this fall. And just because of sheer numbers, we had to make them full-time, but they weren't budgeted that way. We can't necessarily rely on the budget for next year. So that's why, I'm sorry, we can't necessarily rely on the grant next year. We're not confident that that is going to exist again in the fall. It was kind of a one-time thing this year. And the way excess costs just came out this week, I'm not confident it'll come out next year for sure. And then the last certified position there is way overdue. We have one principal at Fawn Hollow with over 700 kids. It's just unmanageable. I was reading in the paper, there was a middle school, down in Norwalk that just got their second assistant principal position for 693 kids. So we have, one assistant or one principal for 700 kids there. It's just, to give anyone an understanding, if you get a bullying complaint from a parent or whatnot, that's 3 days out of your life that there's statutory regulations that you have to do to meet with the kids, meet with the parents, bring both sets of parents in, come back in and do resolutions. Top that with evaluations and meetings and special education PPT meetings. It's just not tenable. In the non-certified positions, there's requests for one-armed school security officer. So we used to have an additional security guard at Massac. And during difficult budget times a few years ago, we reduced that. Now, since then, we've added the alternative school program to Massac. STEM is also at Massac, and obviously Massac continues to grow. But we're looking for an armed school security officer rather than a security guard, which are unarmed. Because what we found this past year was we had we had two situations where our armed school security officers at the elementary schools, who are Board of Education employees, they're former Monroe police officers, but they're Board of Education employees, both had extended medical issues. And when they're out, we don't have a cadre of substitutes for that. Chief White and Captain Smith are awesome. They'll send, a car down there when they're available. So we'll have an armed presence on campus whenever possible. It's definitely not 100% of the time. It can't be. And we understand that, when that person gets called to if there's a situation across town, they've got to respond to it. So the purpose of adding an armed school security officer at the high school would be if we also get into a situation where so it adds a security that we lost a few years ago, but it also gives us backup if one of the armed school security officers at one of the elementary schools is out, they can go in. Or even if one of the SROs are out, we have an armed presence at one of those buildings. The next one was just 5 lunch and recess pairs, which is actually a small ask because those positions are they're 3 hours a day, they're 15 hours a week. And that's really to allow, we have full-time parent educators who are doing lunch and recess duty rather than supporting students and staff in classes. We'd rather get them back into classes. And in some of our schools, we even have our teachers out there doing lunch and recess duty. And their time can be much better spent, with curriculum instruction and assessment. So.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
Okay.
Like the guy from the Matchbox cars talking.
Okay, so going through the certified list with the special ed, so the 0.3, the 0.4, that's 2 people, but part-time?
Right now, there was a 0.7 at Stepney. So it was a part-time person.
Yeah.
We made her full-time, and there was a 0.6 person at Monroe Elementary. we made them a full-time person.
Okay, so with those, I guess, percentages,
Yeah,
does that allow for continued support for the students they support? Or is it gonna be mixed
no, that would be,
support?
It would be
Yeah.
the continued support.
Okay, so like every Monday they would be there to provide the support for that, whoever they're assigned to.
Right, they're full-time, so they're there every day.
Oh, they're there every day.
Right, because go ahead, Jen.
So, so they weren't there every day at the beginning of the school year, and because of the needs that we had, I was lucky enough to get additional money from my IDA grant to actually have them to come in full-time, because we needed somebody there all day, every day to service the students. So
Okay,
they're there all day, every day.
okay, so the 0.3 is really, they're just full-time.
yeah, it's just
Well, the
making,
grant
We're
goes
making
away,
it
so
full-time.
now it's gotta be funded fully.
That's what's
Right.
being funded by the grant right
currently 0.3 is being
Got it.
funded by the grant and 0.4 is being funded by the grant.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next page, just, I don't think there's anything on there that people haven't seen. It has our initial budget adoption, the initial adjustment, our proposed increase, our current increase. And then, so if you look at the next page is our strategies, mitigate the initial 1.187 adjustment. And excuse me. I color coded these, although it's supposed to be like kind of green, yellow, and red. And I kind of prioritize them into things that we're really comfortable with, things that we're a little less comfortable with, and things that we're most uncomfortable with. If I was prioritizing these things, and quite honestly, the green, I don't know, I didn't really necessarily prioritize those things because I'm pretty confident in all that. When we first, we're having conversations. This is one of the reasons why, we don't come out early with an adjustment list, or I don't like coming out early. So I don't want to get people all upset because we didn't know where we were going to be with insurance. And quite frankly, at first I thought we were going to save about $500,000, maybe $600,000 in insurance. And it looks like we're going to have a bigger saving. I know First Selectman Rooney and I, probably be looking to move towards the same type of insurance for both the town and the Board of Ed. So, it was, it's come in significantly better than we had initially hoped. So $844,000 is, leaves us pretty in a much better spot than where I thought we were going to be. Sports transportation, we had when the budget was created, Steve Swenson at the high school did his athletic transportation budget based off of actuals from the previous year and a little bit of what had happened in the fall, but really we were still, halfway through the fall sports season. Last year and to start this year, we were having a really difficult time having All-Star's been great covering our daily runs, but they were having, like everywhere you hear of bus driver shortages, they were having a difficult time picking up our extracurricular runs. They have since hired some more people, gotten some more people on board, and have been able to cover a lot more runs. And, where it would cost us, $300 to go to a game, with some of these outside vendors that knew they had us over a barrel, it was costing us, up to 3 times more than that, and sometimes even more than that. So with All-Star being able to cover more runs, we're pretty comfortable that 75,000 in sports transportation can be reduced. Jen has worked with the preschool, the typical peers, neighborhood kids, the students not receiving special education services, pay tuition to attend our pre-K program. It's very affordable, but there's still a revenue stream coming in there. And one of the things we would do is hit that revenue source to the tune of $41,000 for the pre-K transportation. The other thing, Mike picked up on, we had $25,000 in professional development and curriculum. We have since the budget's been was put together and adopted, we've received a right to read grant, which can in the amount of $25,000, which will help us cover a lot of those professional development and curriculum items there. So those ones I'm pretty comfortable with. That's about $985 of it. The next two are facilities and software renewals, and the rest are kind of prioritized order for their things. And again, a little bit less comfortable, but here's where we are. Facilities, we've had a good year. We only had we had, I don't even know, we had more rain and wind days than snow days. But we had a very good year in terms of snow removal and whatnot. So, this was kind of a blanket line from my maintenance director, Dan Krofsik. It would really be covered in a number of lines: emergency repairs, a whole bunch of other areas, supplies. What we would do is purchase supplies this year with some of the money we have left over from, the benefit of not having a really bad winter. Additionally, we would also look to hit, we do have a revenue line. We do have a revenue line for the, for, one second. He's heard this before. We also have, so the other piece to pick up the facilities is we do have a revenue line for rentals. When we rent the auditorium, when we rent our fields, our gymnasiums, all that kind of stuff, we do draw a revenue stream. So we would pull from that to help, which would be an appropriate place to put it into buildings and grounds. The next one is software renewals. That was a discussion with Paul Course in terms of looking at our existing software programs, doing an audit and eliminating the ones that aren't being fully utilized. He was confident he'd be able to come up with, close to that $10,000. The last four, again, they're in the red. They hit a little bit harder, a little bit closer to home. The first one is a summer reading program. We have a summer reading program at all 3 elementary schools. This is not for special education students, but these are for students who do receive some tiered support. They're short of being addressed in the special education population, but they are. There's a program that we run at each of the elementary schools 4 days a week during the month of July. Kids sign up for either family sign up for either a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday session, and the kids go and they get additional reading support during that month. One of the reasons we put it on here was it was not being as fully subscribed as we would have liked it, but it's still, we're talking about some of our neediest kids. So that's why I put it at the top of the list of in my red category there. Literacy lab, along those kind of same vein of extra support, is we have a non-certified person with some expertise in writing at the high school that helps students with writing assignments, essays, and whatnot. Really the thought behind putting this one up was when I talked to the high school principal, Steve Swenson, he really wanted to keep the teacher, and if he had to give this up to get that, he would. Earlier in the presentation, I talked about adding 5 lunch and recess pairs, and I didn't clarify. That was 2 at Stepney, 2 at Fawn Hollow, and 1 at Monroe Elementary. We would reduce that. We would reduce 3 of them. So Monroe Elementary would not get one. We'd get an additional 1 at Stepney, an additional 1 at Fawn Hollow, which by size, those are the 2 bigger schools, and we keep them pretty equitable in terms of staffing in that. And then the last one was, I went through with all the principals and we cut instructional supplies across the board, proportionally at each school. I think it brings it down to a 0% increase from, this year to last year in terms of instructional supplies. So that's what got us to the 1.18.
Okay.
And then the last page, it kind of speaks for itself. What are the risks? Obviously, we know enrollment continues to be a challenge for us. We've talked a little bit about modulars and space. I keep saying there's no room at the inn at the elementary schools. We've already, encroached on central office space. Fawn Hollow's got folks teaching on stage. We've got multiple special education teachers teaching in the classroom, multiple reading teachers teaching in the classroom with some of our most needy kids. The other 3, again, these are kind of almost prioritized too, because unforeseen maintenance, that could be an issue any year. Insurance costs, not as big of an issue now that we know kind of where we are. Open enrollment, still, you never know who's going to change and add on. The insurance is expensive. And I put unanticipated special ed last because, once again, Jen does a fantastic job with her budget every year, but it is also somewhat comforting to know that that contingency exists if we need it.
Okay.
Trying to go as fast as I could.
You did great. I appreciate that. I have two quick questions on my side.
Sure.
One is on the Chromebooks. I know you said there was a
Yeah.
1-to-1.
Yeah.
What's the cycle of replacement schedules, and how is that being funded going forward? Is it in the budget? I know we used to do it, different ways over the years. So I was just wondering how that was being planned out.
Yeah, with the previous first selectman, that was in capital, and then,
Right.
and I understood, it's not something that really depreciates over that long of a period, so we put it in the operating budget, so we did budget that in this, we did budget an additional $75,000 for Chromebooks this year, so normally we would budget 75, and we budgeted an additional 75 in this one, and that's how that would be funded.
And they run, I mean, is it a 3-year cycle?
Yeah,
Or a
they
5-year
keep
cycle?
it.
Yeah, they would, help me out on this, guys. It was, so what happens at the elementary, third, fourth, and fifth grade, the Chromebooks stay in the classroom. They don't go back and forth home, but they would get new ones. I think we were talking about starting it in
Third and eighth.
in sixth.
Third and eighth.
Oh, it was third and eighth.
Eighth.
Third, oh yeah, this third grade, thank you, Jim. This third grade class would get the first set of Chromebooks, and this eighth grade class was, so the theory behind that being, they have about a 5-year cycle.
Got it. So they would ride their way through.
Yeah,
Right.
so eighth would go to 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Right.
And then, the older ones, anything, over 5 or 6 years goes to K1 and 2, which don't need as much technical support as the other ones.
Right.
What's the CapEx policy? Like, just thinking about like your capital expenditure policy, like that might be more of a question for you, Ron. Just thinking like the logic behind moving it out of CapEx and into OpEx.
So, and this was a decision made by the prior first selectman because it was something that was being purchased every year. It was more of a recurring expense as opposed to a capital item.
One time,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gray area for sure. I mean, you can
Yeah.
make the argument either way. Personally, I'd rather see it in the operating, because once it's in there, it doesn't tend to come out,
Mhm.
where sometimes the capital got pushed,
Mhm.
and we'd end up not keeping up with the equipment over the years. So, when we got squeezed. So I kind of like to see it in the operating, and if we can swallow the increase this year, then it's going to be in there. And, those costs don't tend to escalate. They tend to, if anything, get cheaper over the years. So I like having it in the operating, I'm happy to see us expanding it in the operating there. And then the other question I had was regarding the armed security, and what's the difference from a dollars and cents standpoint from an SRO to an armed security?
Well, and
And
that's
is there
a
advantage
lot.
to others? Right.
The SROs are members of the Monroe Police Department, so that's funded through the police, whereas the armed school security officers are funded through us. I mean, I would say our armed school security officers, I think their total salary somewhere around 30, low 30s.
Yeah.
The problem was we did have SROs. At one point, we had 4 SROs around.
Yeah,
the
remember?
district.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem was the police just couldn't get them anymore, and I understand why. I mean, if you become a police officer, you didn't become a teacher for a reason. Like a lot of them they didn't want to work in school.
It's a very
so.
special person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, and the ones that we have are fantastic, and they enjoy working in schools, and they like that. But yeah, it was difficult to they couldn't find people who were that wanted the job, and quite honestly, you don't want someone who doesn't want to be in there doing that in schools.
Okay.
Ballpark, Mike, you're looking at about half the.
That sounds about right based on what he's telling me. So that makes sense then.
Schools have them.
And then my last question, then I'll open it up to everybody else, was obviously, the enrollment, if we go back 10 years, this is not where we thought we'd be. And you can definitely see it's a significant increase over the last 4 or 5 years. Where are we at with an enrollment study looking forward for the next 4 or 5 years? Is this something that we anticipate flattening out or continuing?
It's a great question. Yeah, we're starting so we finally, we just got our letter back from Silver Petroselli and Associates for the facility study. Included in that is a demographic study. So that will be, we're meeting with
great.
them hopefully on the 17th now. I was hoping to meet with them next week, but they couldn't. So it looks like hopefully the 17th we can meet with them and get that started. And the enrollment study should be able to run pretty independently of that process. So hopefully we'll have something, within, 2 or 3 months. That projects out, and I know everybody or a lot of people are very critical of enrollment studies. But, and
they're mostly terrible, but they're better than flying blind.
Exactly. And they're good for, like you said, 5 or 6 years out. After that, they become less reliable. And I mean,
right.
Understandably so.
Right.
And we
But
clearly have
to plan for
developments coming.
Yeah.
Right.
So is that
Exactly.
something
And
that
if
they would work with? Like they would be talking to like our, I don't know, planning,
They
zoning
talk
or
to
whatever?
everybody, yes.
Okay, just
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah, they look at the number of units, the number of things that are being developed. I mean, they do a lot of good assumptions, but again, they can't predict the economic changes over 5 years. And, obviously I think the COVID situation switched everything, and here we are, very attractive again.
They look
Where
at home
before it
sales,
was, right.
Yeah, they look at home sales, live births, available
Open
land.
land, right,
just-
yeah,
There's a laundry
all the
list.
variables.
Kind of interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very interesting, but there's so many variables that it's very hard to get a long-term accurate number, but certainly each year you have is closer, and, so we can certainly for the next 3 to 5 years have a good look, which is what I'm concerned about, because, if we continued on this path for another 3 or 4 years, we'd have building issues. I think everybody can see that. Yeah. Okay. That's
Got
all
it.
I got. I got it. So let's open it up to anybody else who wants to.
I need to stop. I need to wait my turn.
Yeah, so Mike, this is Steve. I don't actually have questions. I have statements and proposals. I've been attending all of the Board of Ed budget workshops and meetings, and was at the Board of Ed meeting this past Monday night where the superintendent presented these list of items to his board. And based on his comments, I went home and put together what I thought would be a priority list. And then this afternoon, we got a preview of this, and I came out pretty close. As I had said in our joint meeting with the town council, I was looking to restore some of the reductions, the adjustments made by the first selectman. Obviously, as I said at the time, insurance was a no-brainer. Obviously, that comes off the top. So now that we have a number of $844,000, that accounts for 71% of the adjustment that the first selectman made. So then I looked at restoring, I would like to propose restoring all of the items in red. And that totals $116,600. And that's about 9.82% of the adjustment from the first selectman. As to the things in yellow, I had 2 ways that I approached them. One was to restore them outright, because I think they're probably needed. There's risks to the budget, and I think doing that would not be unwise. Or at a minimum, I was thinking restore half of each of those 2 items. So if you restored each of those 2 items and I just picked 50%, we often say, okay, maybe we don't fund something 100%, we do it at 50. We've done that historically on any number of items. If you restored each of those 2 items at 50%, you're adding back $42,500, and that would make those total of 6 items, we'd restore $159,100, or about 13.4% of the first selectman's adjustment. If we restored 100% of the software and facilities and the 4 items in red, we're looking to put back $201,600, or just under 17% of the adjustments made by the first selectman. So I would, certainly want to put all of the red, and I would, my preference would be to restore the yellows at 100%. But, if this body wants to compromise, and do it at 50, those would be the numbers I'd like to see added back.
Well, let me give you my thought process here. The reds, I can certainly understand the argument on. Based on the first selectman's comments, it sounds like the software is a lot of a cleanup, which I'm sure all of us have had experience on licenses that aren't being used and that kind of thing. And, the facilities, I also look at it from a standpoint of, obviously he can pre-purchase a lot of stuff that he's going to need going forward with the light year this year. And, if there was a major issue, this board has always been super responsive. Certainly over the last few years, we have a much different working relationship with the Board of Ed that I think they know if something really blew up, we wouldn't be expecting them to take it out of teacher budgets. We would find the money to do that. I think also if you looked over the last couple of years, which is probably part of the first selectman's thought process on this, was that we have run surpluses pretty consistently over the last 5 years. We really haven't been in a situation over the last 5 years where it's been close. We've been pretty good at accepting what the Board of Ed has asked for in the past 5 years, for sure. We haven't really made any dramatic moves. Certainly the insurance and everything in green helps us a lot. So, we are arguing over smaller numbers than I expected we'd be arguing over, which is great. I'd much rather be in this position. The only thing I would propose is that we don't necessarily take any action tonight until we spend the next few meetings figuring out, we may have savings in other places, we may have pickups in other places, we may have problems in other places. And until we see all of the picture, I'd hold off on a final decision, but I'm certainly could be convinced to definitely add back the red pieces. Barring any further, news breaking in the next 2-3 weeks.
So to add to that, I actually have a question. So we talked about the insurances. We had the contingency set up in the budget specifically for the insurances, and we know that has come in lower. So I know that this isn't about taking money out of the rest of the budget and moving it over, but I think we already know that that's at least in part going to go away. So that was a $400,000 contingency. We're talking about $160,000 to $200,000 that we want to restore. I feel like the money's already there and already allocated to be put back towards the Board of Ed budget. I feel like we already kind of did that. That makes any sense.
I mean, again, the contingency, the intent of the contingency is for unforeseen, obviously. So I like to have contingency left over because obviously, when we're talking 18 months from now, we're not really always going to be able to see what's coming. Mm-hmm. So I do tend to hesitate to just use contingency now and not have any safety net per se. But, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think you're wrong in any way. I just think it might be a little early to make that call. Typically what we do is we go through the Board of Ed, we've got to now, I think all of us, if we go back a month, thought we'd be in a much worse spot with the Board of Ed and be talking about different things. So, a couple $100,000 on a 70-something million budget is a rounding error. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but we're also cutting services for students. We're making our teachers pay more out of pocket for supplies that we're not providing. Teachers already pay a ton of money out of pocket. So I look at these things and I go, these are things that affect the students, right? These aren't things that are, maybe we're going to have, the HVAC system stop working at Stephanie and we might need to spend $75,000 on facilities. This is actually like things that affect the teacher's ability to do their job better, and I feel like we know that there's money sitting in the contingency that was specifically allocated for something we have a savings on or a better outcome than we thought. So just making it noted that I kind of feel I have a difference of opinion. That's all.
No. And that's why we're here. And I mean, again, I think the other thing is, some of the supplies, what they tend to do is if they've got leftover funds from the previous years, they'll pre-buy.
Mhm.
So, to say that it's going to hurt the students, that's not necessarily something you can assume right out. Supplies tend to get purchased when there's availability. And, again, we're not in the position where we're telling them, hey, you have extra money, give it all back to us. We've certainly been very comfortable, and they have every right to spend every dime we gave them. And if it's pre-buying supplies or doing things that will relieve some pressure for next year, with a surplus from this year, that's certainly something that's very easy to do and typically done.
I
encourage
have a
them to do
good,
it.
I just have a question. I'm gonna bounce off of what you're saying, Mike. We were in this exact situation last year. And there was a surplus and there were a list of capital projects and supplies and such that the Board of Ed wanted to go forward with that. Is everything from that list complete? Are there still things left over? I don't.
So, Catherine, are you talking about the money
Yes.
transferred by the Board of Finance at the end of last year? So those projects will be, some are in process, some will be worked on this summer. Because again,
Okay,
a lot
thank
of
you.
projects do
Yeah.
get worked on during the summer.
Okay,
When students
Yeah,
aren't.
they don't like us to do a lot of work in the schools, obviously, when the school's in session. So they'll try to load up
Oh,
a lot
of
of
course
stuff this
not.
summer. But yeah.
okay,
But
thank
there,
you.
But there were some cameras put in at Monroe, which were, that was part of
Which
it.
are part of it. So Mike, I didn't come prepared for a motion. I mean, I would have been happy to make one, but as you said, we tend to talk about it. I feel comfortable if, with you saying you would tend to support the things in red. I think we can wait a couple of weeks and see what,
Yeah, what I like to
anything-
do is
if-
again, not everybody has all the years of experience that we have, Steve, but
Yeah.
we could have Heidi pencil in, on our worksheet, you know what I mean? Just, we could start making notes on the Excel doc and, pencil in that adjustment for now so we can kind of look at it going forward.
Okay,
If
so
that works for you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, if so what you said, we can pencil in the red, that's 116.
I would support that, yeah.
That's 116,600, those 4 red items.
And then
And
basically
that's
as
the
we
day
go
that-
along, yeah.
That's the day that we play around with the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, so
I mean,
then once Heidi
Yeah, we
plugs
use
it
it
in,
going forward, yeah, but we just, as we work through things or we find things we want to change, we'll update the spreadsheet, and then kind of the last meeting, we'll kind of review all the adjustments we made and make sure everybody's comfortable with them. Because again, Joe might come back to us in 2 weeks and say, hey, we just had this that we found, or we may have that was, a savings or more of a problem, and he's certainly more than welcome to come talk to us again. I mean, we don't have to say this is your last bite at the apple.
yeah, and that's really where I was going with my last comment, is if something changes, they've got one more board meeting before we make a decision.
No,
Right,
Well,
exactly.
No, you don't.
we don't have
Oh, you
another.
don't. You're on
Oh, we don't?
vacation.
Our next meeting is May 6th.
Oh, okay, so it'll have to come from Joe and his team, okay.
That's all right. I think
That's fine,
everybody's
that's
on the
fine by
same
me,
page.
yeah.
I don't think we need anything formal from the board. If there was something they needed more money and we gave it to them, I don't think anybody would complain. Just a
Okay.
hunch.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for the superintendent.
Please.
Joe, last year, there were a lot of conversations about the sports transportation. Now I see the $75,000 you're taking out for the sports transportation to match my reduction or help my reduction. Last year, what was the reason for the shortage on the transportation that we can actually use that for this reduction?
What was the reason for the shortage last year?
Yeah.
It's a driver shortage from All-Star. They
Okay,
did not have enough. They had enough to cover us during the day, but they did not have.
and I think you explained some of that. But I just remember it being a situation. I know, Mr. Kirsch, you're looking at the red. Ron, also, everybody in this room, or most of you would know, we entered a very difficult budget season this year. The municipal side was facing extreme increases with medical. And after this room is done, everybody's done in this room, the citizens still have a right to vote on this budget. So we have a responsibility to put a budget out that we believe will pass. However, since we've negotiated so strongly with the medical insurance, we've had some really good news, right?
On the town side.
On the
we'll-
town side,
yeah.
we've had some really good news. So going into this budget, we went into this budget very scared on the medical side. On the town side, we were looking at potential 28% increase,
21 for us.
right? That's very big. So now we're looking at around 10, give or take.
Yeah, on the, yes.
So that helps
a little
us.
below that.
You know, my goal going into this was to come around 2% increase. And hopefully that would pass in a referendum. Maybe with that savings, that would help us get there.
So, the projected savings right now on the town side is about 290. And that's on top of the contingency. So that, I wouldn't recommend removing the contingency because.
No.
You know, even after the budget passes at referendum, things can go sideways. So I think you want that flexibility built into the
Right, the
budget.
contingency.
But
So
there is some
what
additional
was
savings.
what was the insurance savings, Ron?
It's about 290
290
on the town side.
on the town side.
So coupled with the 844 on the board side.
We're at 1134, which is a savings, Mike, that we didn't anticipate at all.
Right.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay. I think we're in pretty good shape, you know, even if we took the insurance and that, it looks like we could, I'm nervous about the sports transportation personally. I don't have the transportation for the athletes. I just want to make sure that's covered. And I look at everything that you have to take out. And to a certain degree, it's upsetting to me. However, people that know what we were up against. And, ultimately, like I said, we're in a better situation, so. Whatever
That's why the
the,
process in another couple of weeks gives us the time to
Yeah.
make the adjustments. We
Right.
haven't even talked about
Exactly.
revenue or anything
Correct.
else. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
this is why we start, and it's also why we start with the Board of Ed.
Board of Ed first,
They're
right?
the
Always.
biggest thing.
of course,
And, historically, we've had issues where we've gone back and had to spend a whole nother meeting talking about special ed, but I think we more or less have that covered.
solve that problem, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a backstop for them, although they've been reporting that they've been getting additional high-cost students. I think they just added another
We did just
two.
get a little rough news this week that the excess costs grant, we were anticipating 758. The state got more than they got more requests than they had anticipated. So they reduced everybody in the state. So we're gonna get 680, I think.
681.
680.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
We're
all
almost
right, so now I have a
less.
question. At the meeting the other night, you stated two numbers you had received, and I don't have my notes from the other night.
Received 575,000,
And you were gonna receive another 187 or something?
Yes.
186.
Yeah.
But
What's that
we've
now
been
gonna be?
106.
We're losing 80,000.
You're losing 80,000, okay. Not okay, but thank you.
Right. Understood.
Yeah, so I mean, so we're still better off, I think, overall than we were in years past, especially because we've got the backstop.
Right.
For
But
sure.
that's always the risk, at this point, going 18 months out for, the change in enrollment. And I've looked at change for years and years, and that's the problem. You can look at where you are in October, but when they do their budget, it's based on what they've got, in December. And if they pick people up between now and June, that's not in the budget. That's just not in their calculations at all.
I actually have a question regarding enrollment. I was looking at the documents that were posted online, showing a slight reduction in enrollment for incoming kindergarten students, obviously, I'm guessing because of the new regulation around start date, or I guess the age requirements. But so basically, if you look at the way like the numbers are flowing, it's literally just taking like the current year numbers and just moving up a year, which makes sense. But I guess so we're projecting fewer enrollments. And I guess I don't know if you know this number or can find this number. But I'm just like wondering what percentage of students were actually in that like few month window who enrolled last year, who were like who were like born after September 1st or
I know
whatever.
from a hard number, it was around 52 kids. And do you remember, we were just talking about this today, how many kids signed for the waiver?
42.
Was it 42? We had 42 kids this year who were born between September 1st and January 1st, that the parents put them through the waiver process. Some of them will not be going. We didn't necessarily say they couldn't go, but we went through the process with them and then, gave the information to the parents. And, in some cases we said, yeah, your child seems like they're prepared and ready to go. And other cases like, they would benefit from another year. So, that's why we've kind of, juggled the kindergarten numbers to mirror, not this kindergarten, but the year before. So we reduce a section each there. The other problem it's posing though is for pre-K. Now we have a group of kids who are falling in that category that, for space reasons, we created a morning and afternoon pre-K program for our 3s and 4s. But now we're gonna have kids that are, 4 3/4 turning 5 that really need a full day program. And my pre-K staff wants to hang me in effigy right now because they really want to get the program going, but we just simply, my fear is we don't have them in, or maybe it's not effigy, they might just want to really hang me. We don't have the space for, if we get too many kids and I gotta add a section, I literally nowhere to put it.
Is it space? It's space before staff or the space would come with staff?
We have the staff.
You have the
We
staff.
could-
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably maneuver.
We just don't have the space and it's
Literally don't-
it's not,
okay.
right,
Yeah.
Okay.
don't have the space.
Gotcha.
That-
So I guess like looking at the number, like I was looking at the student to teacher ratio. I was decided to do a bunch of math today. So I think like it looks to me like we're adding about 5 FTEs. Who would be like non-admin people. So I think the goal, like what I'm seeing, the trend is to keep it, under 12 for student to teacher ratio.
Yeah, it's not, that's a tough thing to.
Yeah.
You can't, I'd love it if you walk with me around the schools on the 12
Yeah,
class. That'd
exactly.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Like a
But that's
private
like all,
school.
got your special
But that's
ed, got your other
yeah.
support staff, your
Yeah.
paraprofessionals.
It's just-
all-
Yeah, you're doing all total
Yeah.
staff,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I was just gonna do it
not classroom
dirty.
teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look I'm pretty sure in the budget book, especially you'll see our class sizes at all the elementaries, roughly. Monroe Elementary has a little bit smaller section sizes, probably around like 18, 19, 20 in there. Stepney and Fawn Hollow, you're looking at 20 to 22, 23
Mhm.
at the elementaries. And then at the middle school and high school, you'll see like mostly, a lot of 22s, 25s.
The high school is 26,
You got
28,
26, 28, yeah.
So what is the number is it like 30? Is that the number of students where you start having to like get paid?
It's supposed to be 28.
28.
You're not supposed to exceed 28 at the secondary,
Mhm.
not the high school.
Mhm.
But that's not good.
No,
It's better in like, some of your AP classes and whatnot, where the kids are a little bit more independent.
Yeah. And obviously the older kids, it's a different ball of wax and having, a kindergarten teacher with 30.
And AP students
Right.
tend to be a certain kind of student, so
It's a little more
you're not
independent.
talking about, your average student kind of thing.
And I guess like, so right now we're basing enrollments, like you said, on a couple years back. Or like not this past year, but the year before, for kindergarten. But then I guess also, I'm sure you have people are already registering their students for kindergarten. And like you said, they're going through that process of, some of these kids, getting the waivers and whatnot. I know I'm a delinquent parent and I was one of those people who waited
Me too.
until like May.
Yeah.
Till I didn't have my kid in kindergarten.
We have them through August.
Yeah, so I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, what is that what percentage of like the new enrollments come in during that, like, late spring or early summer timeframe?
Take a guess.
There's usually a lot
Yeah,
that
it
moves
depends.
in over the summer,
I
A
think-
lot
right?
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it depends. Typically, if I go back to my time when I was
Mhm.
principal of Fawn Hollow, it was typically you'd get most of them before school ended. Like getting into that May and June.
People thinking about it.
Right,
Mhm.
we'd start sending out in January to all the preschool, letting them know, putting it with the Monroe Sun and, trying to get it out to people. But you'd have a lot of people who would wait until it's the end of school.
And definitely before or after this budget season is kind
Yes.
of over, so.
Yes, and then you have the summer move-ins, and that's, you never know, because a lot of people with families want to move after the school year is over,
Mhm.
so that's always a question mark too. I'd be hard pressed to give a percentage.
Yeah. It's an unknown, unquantifiable number. But I guess, I mean, I just was wondering if there was any way to kind of like see like, okay, we've gotten X number of students who are, already enrolled. That's kind of lining up based on prior years. and
According to
stuff like that. Yeah.
the elementary principals, that's what they're kind of seeing.
Okay.
Where we are right now is parallels pretty closely to where we were a couple years ago.
Okay. Just trying to think about, making sure like we're cutting certain things and if we're not like adding certain services that we're not kind of shoot ourselves in the foot because
So
we're
you're saying
not
kindergarten
sure about
enrollment
that.
is running the way it used to in terms of how many have applied this? How many
Just in terms of
responses you got
how many
back?
responses we got
Okay.
back, it's not mirroring what we experienced last year, which I was very shocked at our kindergarten enrollment last year because we had that bubble that is currently in second grade now. They were the kids that those were the kids when school started the year before, we were in mass, half the kids were in, half the kids were out, we're out on Wednesdays. If you had a kid getting ready for kindergarten, especially if they were a little bit younger, maybe August, September, October, like you might say, I'm not sending my kid, wait. And so we had a bubble that next year and I didn't expect that bubble to happen. And then it shifted back. And then we got that bubble again last year, or this year, and then we were not anticipating that at both Stepney and Fun Hollow. So, but we don't seem to be tracking in that way. Now, next year, I'm a little concerned because you're gonna have some people that didn't send their kids from, obviously September, October, November, December this year. So we'll be picking up, we're kind of like picking up a 9-month cohort this year, besides the kids that picked up the waiver. Next year, it'll be a 12-month cohort again.
Because of the law change.
Yeah.
And that's excluding any development.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same thing.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, yeah.
You got a ton of development coming in.
Yeah, and the
And don't
development though
don't be
isn't,
fooled by 55 and over. The people who are in houses now will
You're
move to
after.
55 and over. And you're gonna have people moving in there with kids.
it's
So
starting,
99
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at my street, literally my street, because we moved here in 93. We were the second house on the street on Applegate Lane. And everybody had at least 2 kids. I'm still there, but I haven't had any kids in the school system for 14 years. But the people that are selling and moving out are all being replaced with kids, and we have school buses again, we have trick-or-treaters again. And, we don't need the size house, but if I was to move to a smaller house, it's going to be sold to somebody with kids.
Yeah.
So, me moving to an over 55 community.
That's what the demographics, that's why the Board of Ed hates that word. That's why we don't like hiring
Well-
somebody to do the demographics, because they just can't hit it.
Mhm.
No, but you need to,
I get the math, I do.
but they can pull in information. I mean, the development that we're talking about, 99 homes and 64 kids, is absolutely idiotic. Now that, even if that gets all approved, it's not coming online, next year, but that's a problem.
I actually have a different fear. I have a different fear that if interest rates come down and people sell their homes and move out, that is far more of an impact than development, because you could have a lot of people move into town, which would be more impactful. The impact of that and the development would be.
Yeah, because you've got 7,000 homes that, not that everybody's gonna move out at once, but yeah.
No, but that's a fact.
But that is,
Yeah.
no question. Well, that's all I've got, Mike.
Yeah, I was gonna say, anybody else have any, while we have Joe here to grill, and one of the other things I did want to say is, this is so much easier because Joe, you guys are always with us now. And I think we all remember the years where we didn't see anybody from the Board of Ed for, most of a year. So it does make life a lot easier because we get constant updates and we're very much more in tune with what's going on over there and much more confident in what's being done. So I just wanted to compliment you and thank you for that. And it certainly makes our job easier too.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, anybody have anything else for Joe before we can let him go? The only other thing I wanted to talk about tonight was, are there any other departments we want to bring in for next week? So we can give them some warning. I know, traditionally we've spent some time with DPW because it's fairly complicated, or the police, but I just wanted to get some feedback from everybody on the board if there's anything else.
Well,
Any other areas we want to dive in? Yeah.
So obviously DPW, to talk about roads.
It wouldn't be a budget season.
It wouldn't be a budget season without it, and as I've said, and I brought some numbers today. I'm really concerned because what's showing up now are roads that we did in the first wave in the 2010-14 timeframe that are now in the failing category. And last year, two people came to me regarding Wheeler, and I passed that on to Chris, and they looked at it, and then they went out and put a topping on it. And so the question is, if we've got how many of those situations, and how do we start dealing with things that are on repeat, if you will, when we haven't made it through the first go round on most of the streets, or not most of the streets, but from a mileage perspective.
So what I would love to do is to get DPW in next week, and then because then when we talk to council, roads will certainly be a discussion with them as well. Correct? And that's right. We should have a conversation with DPW before we have a conversation with council.
Well, that moved to the 15th, right?
Council moved to the 15th for capital.
Right, okay.
Yes. The other one, Mike, was one that came up during the town council's budget workshop. The senior center and social services. And there was a discussion, and I don't have my notes with me. I don't know if you do, Sam, about an employee part-time working more than basically a full-time. And I know that they hadn't talked to the first selectman before, or during his budget preparation. And so there was a discussion that ensued during the town council workshop. And then there was some additional discussion at the town council actual budget where they went through and made motions. So I'd just like to understand what that's all about from a personnel perspective, and if there's anything that we can or should do.
Yeah, if I can add just a little thing on that, Mike, that's the situation with Kim Cassie and Mary Ann in social services. Right. She's currently a part-time worker, seems very happy being part-time. We've had a quick conversation, not that the additional work isn't needed, but it was never an ask on the line item in the senior center. It was never a request.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So the night of the town council interaction, it became a conversation, but it was not anything that was ever reduced or cut from the senior center. It was just never asked for. The other thing I just want to talk about just quick with roads, because they're going to come up. As they do the roads now, they do the drainage, because we've had a lot of drainage issues through the years. So when they do the roads now, instead of just paving the roads, they're fixing all the drainage, and sometimes aquariums involved and so on and so forth. So for me, I just always like to have bulk numbers, and just really quick for this room. When I spoke to Mr. Nowacki and Mr. Phillips, I said, give me a quote on what it costs to do drainage and road a mile. So to do a mile of road drainage and paving and all the work is about $900,000 to do a mile of roadway. So just to put it into perspective, right. You may start looking at patches a little bit more on a positive side when you think about a mile of road costing $900,000. They're also looking at getting a new roller, which gives them the ability to do cleaner, neater patches. They rented that last year, and that was kind of the first year out. So it wasn't the nicest looking job, but it got the roads through. They're going to have the ability to patch it much better moving forward. So I'll let them tell you, but I just wanted to address that.
Yeah, no, and that's actually one of the issues that I have, because 2 years ago, I asked the question about the storm drains.
Mhm,
And the response that I got from Chris, because I asked about cost,
mhm.
is we're estimating the cost to do a storm drain at a third of what it's costing us to do the asphalt. I said, great, that's a good number to have. Problem, we haven't increased the amount of money we're spending on roads to account for that additional 1/3. So whatever the number is,
Right.
I'm
We're
happy to
doing
have.
67% of the roads instead of
By no
100%
means am
of
I
the
gonna
roads, right?
argue with you about paving roads. I was just giving an example of what it costs to do. Yeah.
We're in agreement. I'm saying
Yeah.
it makes the situation, it exacerbates the situation, because the storm drains absolutely have to be done
I know.
for the road surface.
And the other thing is, if you do the roads and do not do the drainage, then you find yourself sometimes redigging the road up and then you have another issue.
And the
Right.
other question I have, which is a technical one for Chris. I don't think we own an infrared heater for asphalt. If we don't, and we have rollers and we have the other kinds of equipment, we ought to consider buying one of those. What it lets you do is it lets you heat up the asphalt around the cracks and holes.
Mhm.
And then you just add new, and it gives you gives you a whole brand new surface with sealed edges and,
Steve,
Yeah.
I'm with you when it comes to more equipment for public works.
okay?
I'd love a tree warden. I'd like a tree crew. There's a lot of things I'd love to
Yeah.
see there.
So that will get into, where I want to spend,
Yeah.
some of the excess funds we have. Because I think they put off the bucket truck for 5 years maybe now. I have to go back and check. So, yeah, maybe you.
I mean, a
and
lot of this stuff goes
Uh,
into just SPC capital and stuff.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
But in any case,
For DPW, or Public Works, will we have somebody from like the sanitation side who'll be able to speak to some of those items? Cause I just want to make sure, I know like sanitation rolls up into that, but I wasn't sure if we'd have somebody be able to speak to some of the recycling costs.
Chris
And all that.
should be able to.
Chris
Okay.
should be able to handle all that, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that's a
my
good one
quick-
too, because we haven't dove into that in a number of years,
Yeah,
and it's
it's-
gotten crazy.
Yeah, it has gotten crazy, especially considering it's not like we're getting anything great. Like they come once
Correct.
every other week and they don't even empty your trash can when they come.
so Mike, for next week, do you want to focus on departments that are expense driven versus revenue? Because obviously, we're gonna have to talk, or not have to, we said we would talk about interest income and stuff, and I see Frank sitting here, so I don't know if you want to just put that off to the till the
That
end.
was gonna be my question. What night are we?
That
gonna
was-
do revenue?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
my
I will
thought
update the
process was
model
Frank.
prior to that.
That's what I was thinking, is we leave Frank till as late as possible. We usually do that. Usually what we've done historically is revenue was the last thing.
So,
Okay, so what night will that be, Mike?
do you think we can do that after we meet with the council on Monday? the
I think
15th?
so. I think so, don't you?
Well, I know the council was interested in seeing where we were going to go with the revenue side. I know that was a specific request of Jason.
Okay, well, they're gonna be here on the 15th.
Yeah,
So
let's
why
roll
don't
it
we-
into that.
Why don't we bring them in, and I think I will want to do capital with them first, and if they want to hang around,
Right.
there may be other people who want to come for the capital discussion, if they have, something in capital that they care about, like a,
Right.
Fire guy or somebody. And then they can stick around and we can do the revenue on the 15th, in case there's something that needs a follow-up for the 18th.
So
Right.
what's next week then?
Next week will be any other departments we want to bring in?
Right now, DPW.
Right now, DPW.
The only one who's not available is the library director. It's not.
Yeah.
And
got
I
that.
did not have anything for,
Anyone see senior service or like social services, is that right?
that was the one I was talking about, that Terry expanded on the,
And we also wanted police, is that
Yeah.
right?
Just one comment in terms of that meeting, and Terry pointed out it wasn't a request. The way some of the comments came in the council meeting, it was, is there anything else you need? And almost always, if that's the way the question is asked, as opposed
We always
to,
need more
do
money,
you
yeah.
have what you need to accomplish your mission?
well, the problem that I've had with the process all along, is when the departments get, and I did not see what letter or instructions Terry sent out, but historically, if you get a letter that says, keep it to X, well, percent or whatever, I know people, when I would talk to them, were not putting things in. I also know, and again, Terry's very open, he got requests and he documented how many, how much money he took out, and that's fine, that's his job. I don't disagree with that at all. But then it's for the council or for us to look at it and say, okay, we get it, but maybe we have new news now, and maybe there is, the same way we said to the Board of Ed, what's your priority list? I'd say to the first selectman, is there a department that needs half a head count or something like that? Was there a priority with out of what he cut?
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things we've discussed is we've been trying to leave head counts and all that to the first selectman and council, and they didn't make any changes or any recommendations to us to adjust.
Right, but we're gonna have another, whatever we said tonight, $1.5 million, dollar piece of knowledge to say nothing of whatever we add in revenue. And, I always get concerned that the way the process works, we tend to not do things that we might be able to do, or we push things out. Capital purchases being the most obvious. The headcount is another. We've done some reorganizations of departments. But we go through this process and then we say, well, okay, maybe there's things we can do between now and the next budget if things work out, or if we want to, go back and have a follow-up discussion, none of which ever happens, right? So it's just the nature of of the beast, and maybe there's a way to begin to tweak that beast a little bit. Just my thoughts.
I think the only thing that we could do to help that is, at least from our end, is just start a little earlier. So we talked about that, Heidi and I talked, and Ron, we talked about next year starting maybe in October, just starting a little earlier. That may help get us a little,
And look, this was
bit
a
more.
tough year because you weren't seated until the end of November.
Right.
And, and Mr. Manjos, I apologize, Mr. Manjos came to me and he says, welcome to the perfect storm of budgets. And those were his exact words. And to be honest with you, when we sat down and went through the whole thing and getting to the percentage that we had, I was very, very happy because I never expected to get there. And now looking at, it's unbelievable to me that we even got here. And then with the refund, the benefit there with the Board of Ed medical, that was a real gift. And also, wrestling with insurance with locked in and the state and going back and forth, as we did, that was a gift too, that we never expected in the beginning to have. We were looking at the opposite direction and significantly the other direction. So I'm very pleased that we're actually even here with this budget.
Well, yeah, I always am, but I've only been on this board for 5 years, but I've been observing it for most of the 30 years I've been in town. And we're always very conservative. We're always concerned that the sky is gonna fall and somehow it just doesn't quite get to hit us on the head, but.
And just.
Okay, sorry.
That's a good place to be now.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't mind being there.
We still need to be concerned. Again, being at the polls on Tuesday and listening to people come through, in spite of the fact and the efforts that have been made here to keep the increases to a minimum, people are still very concerned, particularly seniors who are coming through, in terms of the taxes that we have and the tax increase. So whatever we spend, it's gonna lead to some more taxes. So I think we need to be very cognizant of that side of it as well.
Very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing that I've kind of noticed is, like, we were talking about headcount, obviously not our job to pick what every department needs. But there is a trend that I've seen where you have these positions that are budgeted for over and over and over again and aren't filled. Flip side, that's like more common than the inverse, which is, departments that have a need and don't necessarily get what they need. I think like the two departments where finance and animal control, I want to say. I might be lying. I have to double check my
Can
spreadsheet.
I,
But yeah,
can I speak on that a little bit?
yeah.
And I may have misunderstood a portion of that, but I mean, those positions that don't get filled and stay open year after year, you know, every town in the state is facing those problems.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, municipalities can't increase their salary expenditures to the point of what the job market is really demanding. And, you know, those positions that are open are still needed.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think that's like the conversation that is missing. It's like, is this something that we can't fill because of the amount we're willing to pay or able to pay? Or is this something that is kind of a little bit of padding for the department? And I think that you're going to get both answers are going to be correct in certain departments. And I think if we're trying to kind of cut things and, you know, keep the taxes lower, you know, it's worth examining is all, you know, and I don't necessarily.
And I
Well,
think
I'm glad that Terry just filled 13 positions.
19 as of today.
Sorry.
Nice.
Absolutely.
But
We're gonna
Catherine,
go.
just to jump on the coattails of you there. It's not only the salaries, it's also finding people with specific skills. You know,
Exactly.
this is what I'm running into. You know, I had a meeting with somebody who's very vocal in meetings and said, we need a town planner. And I basically said, find me one. And they said, oh, I don't know where to look for one. Well, you're in my office and you're asking me to get a town planner, but you can't find one because I'm going to tell you right now, they're not easy to find. You know, so a lot of these positions take specific sets of skills and the people are just not out there. A lot of times, you know, we lose people to other towns. They don't leave what they do for work. They leave and they go to another town, and many other people have come from other towns and worked for us. Well, that's not a great environment because we're taking from other towns and now they have an opening. You know, the creation of people in certain areas, especially like land use, for example, very, very tough to find people with those skills. You know, so it's finances, it's money, yes, but it's also even finding the people to fill those positions. So that's my caveat to that. So that's all I have.
No, that.
You're right,
No,
Terry.
I mean, Sam's point is just that when you look through the data, you know, it may not be the same job, but we've had, you know, if you can fill 19 spots in, you know, 3 months, then, you know, we've got a bunch of openings and that's just mathematically.
Well, you know, their maintainers are different jobs,
Yeah.
you know,
I
and
get
now
it,
with the law
but-
enforcement contract, now we've got, you know, people that are willing to laterally transfer and jump to the academy. Before that, people were going the other direction. It's immediate how the change is, you know, and finances is a role for sure, but just finding those people is too
I
challenging.
can't tell you how
We all
many
agree.
police officers we've trained and
They leave.
Then they leave for somebody that's paying more, but.
We're hoping
And I
that
mean,
will
we've
change.
had.
Yeah, but
issues
we've
in-
also done a nice job in the last couple contracts
Yes,
of
in the last couple of years, yeah.
Yeah.
raising steps and raising, you know, raising the
Yeah.
entry level. So I
We're
mean, you know,
much better
I don't
off.
think that's as much of a problem as it was 10 years ago when we started doing
No,
this.
yeah, you're absolutely right. No, that's what.
Well, the only, and law enforcement really quick, the only thing with law enforcement, Mike, is it's just, since some of the changes in law enforcement, there's just not an appetite for people to go into that industry.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
so there's not like, years ago, if you weren't paying or you're paying less than other towns or the benefits weren't as great, there was still a pool. There was still, you know, like a group of people looking to just get into law enforcement. They're just not, there's not many of them there. It's a very small percentage in comparison. So that's all.
Sad but true. Okay. So what do we make any, do we want social services? Do we want?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from them, and I think we'll probably spend more time on roads than anybody, but I don't know if there's anyone else.
Okay. I don't have anybody else. I mean, again, since the contract was just taken care of, and Terry seems to be right on top of that one. I don't have any.
Well, I mean,
Just to add real quick, just on the social services, we do have now, which we didn't have before. We have a liaison to the Center of Family Justice, which also offers services to the town that we didn't have. We were working with the Center of Family Justice, but we didn't have a direct connection. Now we have a direct connection, so there are some more social services that are available to us with the with the small office that we have set up. So just a consideration, that is an add to an ability to use some sort of social services. So just take that into consideration. That's all.
So my only other question would be, is there anything from the fire departments that we need to hear about,
Or EMS, right?
or EMS?
I didn't see anything outside of capital.
Yeah, I didn't either, but.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, I
is.
think there's a lot of capital discussions to have with that. But
Yeah,
I
they
didn't
were-
see anything
yeah.
outside of capital, because usually that's what it is. It's the breeding equipment, it's the
okay.
trucks, it's the, you know what I mean? And I felt like that's all capital stuff.
So is your
Can they
intent to
come
bring
to the
them?
Capitol meeting?
Yeah, that's my
They
question.
usually do.
Sorry, Steve.
No, that's fine. So my question's a little bit broader. Are we gonna ask multiple groups to come to the Capitol meeting?
I mean, we can ask anybody we want. I mean, I'm assuming it's typically draws a crowd just because
Yeah,
it's what it is.
okay,
But I mean, we don't formally have to invite anybody, but we certainly
Right.
will make it aware that we're doing capital, and they're more than welcome to come
to
join.
come. Okay.
Yeah.
And Mike, also, I don't know if you were there, but in the beginning, we did have a capital, an SPC meeting just in the beginning, just to get the projects out in front. I
Right.
don't know, did you go to that? Were you there,
I
Steve?
was only there for a few minutes because I had another
Yeah, so
meeting.
a lot of, so council is aware of a lot of the projects because we have gone, you know, through.
And we,
Through them,
and
right,
and
which is what we want, right.
Terry had them send all of us, so we all have a copy of that packet electronically. My understanding from the council meeting was that they were going to be scheduling another strategic planning meeting for the 8th.
It
I
is
think-
scheduled.
Is it Monday, the 8th? This Monday?
Is it Monday?
Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't
it
look on
is.
the
It's-
calendar.
I
I
think
just
it's
saw
been
it.
noticed, Steve. It should be on the website.
Okay, I came across it in my notes today and I didn't have time to go look. Okay. So that would be the only other thing, if anybody wanted to drop in. I don't, the last one was done in the library. You know, in the meeting room there, so I don't think it was televised or not televised, but you know, online. So people want to show up and hear, it might be worthwhile.
I think, well, we have to go by room availability, so, but I think it is.
Oh, okay. They had a huge crowd. Because they had everybody that had a.
All the departments.
Had a dog in
They
the
had
fight.
all the departments. And, you know, multiple fire chiefs and, you know, the whole
Right.
thing, so.
Mr. Kirsch didn't have a seat.
Oh, no.
See?
I always want to see from Mr.
I think he
Kirsch.
took the
Don't kid
last
yourself.
seat left.
There you go.
I got a seat, but unfortunately I could only stay for part of the meeting and that ran several hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
So
That's
just so
fine.
we know, so right now it's DPW, social services, not police, or,
Correct.
okay.
okay.
I do have a question about police in general. So I think before we had these HR wage adjustments and the wage adjustments, and I think that was specifically for the police contract that was still open.
There are,
There's more.
there's more.
There's other
I mean,
contracts too.
Yeah, so.
We have 3 bargaining units this year.
Yeah.
Police, highway, clerical.
So I
Yeah.
guess, will we get an updated budget that shows an adjusted wage adjustment? So that way the correct amount is sitting in the police department, so we have a better sense
So
of those numbers?
Yeah, so, push out the wage adjustment to the, I guess we could do that.
I mean, at the same time, I don't want you to print this whole thing out again.
Yeah, so,
Over over a reclass essentially.
I mean, that
Been
contract
done about
was,
30
it was
times.
just signed, it was just signed Monday.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw the reporting by Bill.
First of all, you-
Yeah, so
But if we just get the number, I think like if I know the number and I just know where to.
what's in
reclass
wage
it,
adjustment? Yeah.
Yeah, then that's
Yeah.
good enough for me, yeah. We don't need to
It's,
redo all
it's the
that.
vast majority.
I figured, yeah.
Heidi will update it and show it up on the screen and, you know, we can do that we can review
Correct.
the changes at each meeting. So maybe that's something we ought to do, Mike, is
Yes.
just make a note at the beginning of the meeting to have Heidi show us the latest update.
Yep.
Just so you guys know, I'm not gonna be here on the 18th.
No, this will be done before. We'll do that.
So.
Well, leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll, if we can't have it done by the 11th, maybe we could have it done by the 15th. Is there a meeting in between there or is that it?
No, that was it. The 15th was our safety valve.
Right. All right.
So the 11th.
So Mike, I have a procedural question that's probably ridiculous, but
like
because
your
I'm on the
prepping.
board now. But historically, we would have had some public participation at our workshops, or at least you would acknowledge public if they wanted to.
Yeah,
speak.
no, I mean, I get it. I'm sure you remember, I never put public participation on there. We always made an exception for you because you were participating and helping us. So I always opened it up and I didn't, but we don't formally,
Yeah, but
outside of
we-
what we
I
did
don't think there'll
tonight.
be any
Right.
public there, but
Right.
if somebody is there, if by chance they show up, I would like the opportunity if the public sometimes shows up to decide to speak.
Yeah, it would be nice. I mean, because they haven't been showing up. If somebody actually does show up to one of these.
Nobody showed up tonight. Nobody showed up
Yeah.
for our meeting.
Nobody showed up
last
to
year.
the public hearing, exactly.
Nobody showed up
Yeah.
to the town council public hearing. this
Correct.
year. Nobody showed up to the town council public hearing last year.
Exactly.
And,
I mean,
and the
it's,
budget participation numbers are dropping like it's. Like
and we used to get, Steve will tell you, you go back 10 years, we used to get crowds. I mean,
I
it was not
remember,
always fun, but yeah, we used to get crowds.
that's how I started coming.
Exactly, I know.
Crowd, yeah.
It's like it's a cool thing to do on a Thursday night, right?
My first meeting I ever went to was a Board of Education budget workshop in the conference room at Monroe. And
The first one I ever went to was a planning and zoning meeting over horses. That was almost a riot. I'm sure Ron will remember back in the day.
Horses,
his
well, probably
parents-
involved my
his
parents.
His parents were leading the riot. That's when I get to meet his mom. It was awesome. I was totally sucked in.
You probably got invited to her house, Mike.
I did. Matthew got a horse ride. I did. When I was on zoning, I got invited when they were trying to change the regulations because I was like, I don't know anything about horses. She's like, you can come on over and I'll teach you. I was like, and I took her up on it. So yeah. Been a lot of good experiences. That was definitely one of them.
That was well before I knew Mike. Just for the record.
Too funny. All right. Are we good?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Great. Thank you all. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Good night.